Do you believe in the existence of extraterrestrials?
Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where and when you're watching this broadcast. I'm Thomas Festa, my friends, and this is Disclosure Tonight. Happy Monday, October 6, 2025. Would you look at that? We're about 12 weeks from Christmas. Can't wait to see what all of our fellow trolls are going to be getting from their FedEx Santa Claus soon these days. Oh my gosh, friends, we have such a good show ahead of us today. Let's get into welcoming the audience. Who the heck do we have out there? Remember, friends, you're in the chat. I am going to welcome you in. Say hello, everybody, in the chat, and I'll call your name. Who's out there? We have Amiga Rules, Brains. We got Carl Joe Garrison, along with the Chromosome Cowboy. Good to see you, my friend. Interesting tweets. Digger Dogs here, along with Eliza Teal. We have Evan B. Eversource here, along with Geraldine Durazio. Followed by Gray Hair Discoveries, J Cad, Joey Spades, and Kelly Bro with those piercing blue eyes. Good to see you, Kelly. Ken Massey's here, along with Martime Unprepared, Megan Betts, Mr. Grimlock, Mr. X, Mr. Catfish 3100, Mr. Joey B, and our friend, our mod, Mr. Niles Guy. Watch out for him, my friend. He is a pit bull, pun intended. Perez here, along with Paul Damon, Push King, and Paul Damon's a cat guy. Oh, that just ruined the whole picture for me, my friends. Meow. Push King's here along with Rebecca. We got Ricardo, Rodney, Scooby Dooby Goobies here. Shelly Montgomery, the Super Unknown. We got Ten Briss along with Truckin' Pawpaw. Two Midgets on the Horse coming to us off of I-90 in northern Idaho. We got Vern Dude, Wendy Joe, Woodrow Smith, and Yellow Tommy Tanker, also known as Andy. What the heck? You're supposed to be at work, but maybe you are, my friend. How about that? On that note, let's go ahead and jump into the studio. Mike. How you doing, my friend?
There we go. The theme song.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
nice.
Well,
Yeah.
we do have an interesting title card today. I never thought I'd have the opportunity to say whistleblower claims ancient aliens. Could it be true, Mike? We know we've heard Lou talk about this in the past.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation to be had, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about tonight.
Almost as interesting as the insurrection going on up in Portland. I've been watching this nonstop, friends. This is coming to us in Portland Annie over on on YouTube at this point. He's got a great stream showing this off. It's dead right now. That looks like Rob almost, but it's not. But I got to say, Mike, can't wait to see where this is all going to be leading us in the near future. Yeah, we're going to have a bunch of shows on this as we get to it. But getting back to the main topic of the night, yes, where did that go again? Oh, desk solo. All right. Yes, Mike. Oh, Zoom solo. We've got ancient aliens popping up. And Nick, you're going to have to wait. If you wanted to talk to me before the show, you should have jumped in then. But before that point, let's get to it. We've got a interesting clip coming up, if I can find it here. Coming up from Jeremy Kenyon Lockyer Corbell. Where did all those names come from? Is it like a middle name, Mike, followed by his mom's maiden name and his dad's name or something?
Well, if he was of Spanish descent, that would be the norm, but I don't know. I don't know why he's using it in that way.
I think he's from the United States, though, isn't he?
Yeah, I believe so.
God, sorry, I sound like one of the reporters on CNN at frickin' 5 o'clock in the morning.
It rubs off when you
it does, doesn't it? Yeah, that's an interesting fact. Let's go ahead and take a look at the story we've got coming forward. Let's get into it, Mike. Yes, believe it or not, in the clip that wasn't brought forward in the latest Weaponized, finally was brought forward. And here's a part of Weaponized episode with Dylan Borland that George Knapp and I were seeking clarification on releasing. Happy to be able to show it now. So we got a minute 12 to go listen to Dylan Borland, Mike, going ahead and talking about this could potentially be ancient aliens. Let me go ahead and fix this really quick. Lower all. There we go. All right, let's play it. Here we go, everybody. You know what? I need to make this a little bit larger so everyone can see this a little bit better. All right, bring it up here. Let me hide my beautiful face, and here we go, everybody. Flame up.
To do tracking of what was described at that point as propane tanks. They had photographic evidence of archaeological digs of some of these, and they had photographic evidence of ones that were complete. They did not disclose where they came from, which goes back to Arrow and the word games that are played with Arrow in this subject.
Mike, I have to pause into this because this doesn't go back to Arrow. This goes back to Lou Elizondo talking about, like the equivalent of having an archaeological dig for King Tut or such and getting down into it and finding a 747. Remember those statements?
Right. Yep.
But this is the same kind of thing. Archaeological dig, but they didn't find a 747. What did they find? Supposedly a Tic Tac.
Very, very interesting.
Oh, yeah. Let's get into this. Here we go.
But they were told, hey, we're trying to track these things. We've contacted them. We have this technology. We're working on bringing them down. We're
taking down Tic Tacs.
What would be known as Tic Tac.
What year was this?
2015.
So actively trying to take down, and you said also archaeological photos.
There was, yes, they had brought, these are very old. They were informed they were very
So 2015, let me just unpause it. Let me just let it go.
old.
In what form do you see this information? How do you see information that says we've got prehistoric archaeological digs that are coming up with propane tank Tic Tacs, and at the same time we're seeing them flying around and we need to take them down?
That was part of their briefing.
Their briefing to you.
The briefing to the people in the legacy program, I know.
Mike, that is some damning information. This is the first time we've actually heard a whistleblower besides Lou Elizondo come out and actually talk about what was actually seen at these archaeological digs.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I got to tell you, in the back chat, we're not getting any of that audio from the video.
Oh, you weren't. Oh, that's why.
Nope.
Sorry about that. Yes, Mike, it is in the wrong browser. Thank you for letting me know. Sorry, you guys, everyone in the back couldn't hear that, but you know where I was coming from, at least.
I do, and it's perfectly fine. I just wanted to let you know.
Oh, thank you. I had stuff cached up with frickin' Chrome, and it needs to be coming across from the Brave browser. Oh, well. At least that's an interesting story, to say the least. And you know what? Ancient aliens, I'll take it, because, if you look at what's been going on with humanity, our rapid evolution at certain points, it all kind of ties back to a higher life form, not necessarily a god, or gods for that matter, little G1, not the big one that created all this stuff, but the little gods who are flying around are the sky gods, and the ones we mistakenly took as the gods from the heavens. I guess if you have an older civilization, you're not understanding what's coming around, it clearly can change everyone's religious aspects.
Yeah, that's true. And there are a lot of people out there with very strong religious aspects.
Oh, yeah.
Especially on this topic.
Oh, yeah. Shall I mention his name, Rob Heatherly? I didn't realize how serious he was as a born-again Christian, but, man, there are certain lines you can't cross, because when you do, you're damned to hell forever. Not that a Christian would ever forgive you, but some of them don't understand. They don't understand what is a WWJD. What would Jesus do, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Not even close. All right, on that note, Mike, I believe we've got a wonderful guest here at this point tonight. We've got Tom Whitmore coming and visiting us today. Tom used to be a
board member.
He was a member of the board at Mufon, and he's also done countless years as a researcher, jumping into the whole MJ12. I'm not going to call it a conspiracy. I'll call it as a cover-up. Mike, your thoughts?
No, I would agree. And Tom has spent a lot of time on this subject trying to get to the truth, which is what everybody eventually wants. We want to know what's really going on. So my hat's off to Tom for the amazing work.
Yeah.
that he's done all this time.
Now, just to recap, we had Jay Anderson, who's in the back right now as well, to come and talk about his demotion and some of the things that kind of went on with Mufon when he was there. We looked some stuff up. We talked about it. Tom said, I want to come in and correct this and get the record straight and maybe explain some things. So on that note, Tom Whitmore, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm glad to be here. And good evening, Mike.
Good evening, Tom. Good to see you again, my friend.
Great to see a smile on your face, my friend. I love it when you're
Ask
here.
me anything. I may not be able to answer it, but you can ask.
Well, let's start off with the recent interview we did with Jay about Mufon. What are some of your thoughts as a former board member about what was going on with him?
Well, I don't know his case. Do you know, can someone tell me what years we're talking about?
Yeah, Jay is here with us. Jay, what years was this going on?
This is just recently this year.
Okay.
Going
I
back
came
8
up-
years, though, Jay? You were with the organization for 8 years, right?
Oh yeah. But this thing that just happened this year in 2025.
Okay. Now, I went on the board around 1985 and I retired in 2022. So I'm no longer active in MUFON, but I thought I would come on the show because I was on the board. I mean, I've been through all of the executive directors, Walt Andrus, John Schuessler, James Carrion, Clifford Cliff, David McDonald, and Jan Harzan. So, I can lend some perspective on MUFON, and I know what kind of problems it has and what kind of problems there are with the organization.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to claim that MUFON is perfect or anything. It's not.
No one's perfect. We're all human for that matter, Tom.
Yeah.
So I had a question for you, Tom. Are you familiar with what was going on with the missing Bigelow money with MUFON? Are you familiar with that at all? With Robert Bigelow and him contracting MUFON to do field investigations?
Yeah. I think the field investigation side of it was okay, but they were throwing so much money at us at the time that there was a lot more being injected into the system than was required for the field investigations. Because, the MUFON gets hundreds of reports every month, but maybe only 30 or 40 were being investigated, at the level that Bigelow was interested in. But having said that, you have expenses, you have travel expenses, hotel, and so on and so forth. And MUFON was, there was quite a bit of money going into that, but they were providing so much money that there was a margin there. And I think that I can't tell you exactly what the problem was, but I believe that MUFON management, and I want to make a distinction because I was a board member. I wasn't involved in the day-to-day management of the organization, and I wasn't involved in the day-to-day management of the field investigation, the STAR Team investigation project. But I think part of the problem was this thing came up pretty fast, and MUFON management, that is the executive director and certain board members that were involved, much more involved than I was, that they were scrambling, for one thing, to get this field investigation network set up. Now, when I say that, MUFON already has a field investigation network, but the STAR Team people were selected out of applicants from the whole field investigation network, and they had to set that up. They had to provide reports, and it was a whole lot of activity. And I think that the people that were running it day to day, it was taking them some time to get to the point that they were able to start implementing the other things on the list that were supposed to be done that were not directly involved with field investigations. And I think that after a period of time, Mr. Bigelow, who's extremely strict about money accounting and about cash, he began to get dissatisfied with the situation. And what ended up happening was Bigelow wanted to cut back on the amount of money that was being sent to MUFON because he felt like it wasn't all being spent on the field investigation, or maybe it wasn't being spent on other things that were as per the contract. And I think that's the origin of the problem.
Well, one of the other issues that we were aware of that Jay was sharing with us the other day is that the Bigelow team also wanted your
you got an email from Lou Buffet
to
I did.
sign NDAs.
Yes.
Hold
on
a
second, Mike. I've got something that's popped up and
Please
started playing here on
reach out.
accident.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Let me go ahead and see if I can find
Jesus
this.
Christ.
They signed
that's not
NDA.
it. There we go.
We all signed
There we go.
NDAs.
Would you like to read it, or shall I?
You have to.
Hold on a second, guys. I've got a video that started playing here.
Courtesy, I thought I'd do the same thing back. So
There we go.
You have to have confidentiality because you're dealing
I
with
hope
witnesses.
you got my email. I'm following up
unless
to
they
see
give
if you
permission
found the courage to speak
for
out
their name,
against this
for their
shit.
contact information to be
There's a
used,
lot
for
of
their
people being
personal
hurt by
identification
this group.
to be used.
That's you lot,
It has to be kept confidential. So there has to be a ground level foundation.
As in rather be squirting,
confidentiality.
right? Hold on, guys.
Yeah.
Hold on one second.
He
I've
was
got a
recently
video.
doxed and threatened.
I've got audio
Welcome
that
to the
kicked up in the
internet,
background.
sir.
I have no idea where it just started playing out of nowhere.
Doing my
I'm
show
trying to kill it right
completely.
now. Give me a
Your
second
evidence
here.
will go a long way
I'll
to
have it killed in a
correct what
second.
is
Oh,
So in other words, we've got a scoop
Jesus
here.
Christ.
Rather
Hold on,
be
everybody. Let me
squirting
just kill this
has
audio.
left any association.
Okay, I've killed it for the audience so they can't hear it. Okay. No, it's not. Dang it. Where in the hell is this? Got it.
Cases weren't providing the cases back to MUFON.
Well, isn't that on them then?
Well,
Yes and
Bigelow
no.
was paying and wanted to keep. He was like subcontracting out, at my understanding, for the MUFON investigators and paying for it, but he didn't want the investigators to share back with MUFON what they were investigating and made them
No,
sign
I
NDAs.
think what Tom just actually described on this was that the money was coming across, and they were sending more money than was required for the jobs to get done, and because of that, that money was coming in and potentially either accumulating or being spent on other things besides what Bigelow wanted. Is that what you kind of described, Tom?
Yeah, but here's the other thing. There was MUFON, but then there was also Bigelow's side of it. And Bigelow had his own investigators. And in fact, sometimes the MUFON investigators would show up, at a case, and then Bigelow's people would show up too. And as well, even if MUFON did if the MUFON STAR team did investigate a case, Bigelow's people might come in after that and do follow-up work. So, and as far as non-disclosure agreements are, if you work for or with Robert Bigelow, you sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Right. And I'm sure it's pretty binding.
Yeah. And he has the wherewithal to back it up.
You know what the term was? How long did the non-disclosure agreement go for? Was it in perpetuity, or did it have a time frame?
I can't answer that off the top of my head. I'd have to go look it up.
Yeah. Absolutely. But either way, he was a very business-oriented gentleman. He looked at his funding. He wanted to try and protect it and make sure that it was going towards what he wanted. In other words, if I'm giving you this much to do the investigations, I'm expecting you to spend this much money on this because that's what I'm funding you for. I want you to man it to that particular level to make sure that the investigations are being done to a good point. Do you think that in their best interest, the MUFON was providing enough resources based on what they saw was adequate? Or did they look at what the contractor or the initial, what Bigelow wanted to be funded at and staffed at? So there was money that was there. There was things that were given up. Was there an expectation given from the staffing in that money to go along with what MUFON was going to provide?
Well, I think they were happy with the investigative side of it.
Right.
Now, when MUFON, Walt Andrus asked me to help out and write a few checks because I want to give you a little history. Back in the good old days before the internet, there were basically 3 UFO groups. There was NICAP, there was MUFON, APRO, and CUFOS. So there were 4.
4, yeah.
And then
but what
APRO
about
dropped
NARCAP?
out.
They were around too, weren't they?
No, that was later. That was later. And they didn't always cooperate with each other. And Bigelow came in and he has money. And he said, look, he was funding individual UFO researchers. The best known is Linda Howe. But he wanted the UFO groups to work together. So they formed what became known as the coalition, the UFO coalition. And Bigelow even provided fax machines so that the groups could communicate with him and communicate with, to facilitate better communication between the groups. But at some point, they were having coalition meetings, and Bigelow became dissatisfied because some of the more conservative UFO guys didn't want to get into crop circles. They didn't want to get into like Bigfoot and things like that. And I think there were some things that Mr. Bigelow was interested in. They didn't want to get into. And and at least one person didn't treat him with the courtesy and the respect that he deserved.
So he wanted to go maybe more into consciousness in other areas just besides UFOs. And there was pushback within the organization of MUFON, irrespective of them being paid or not.
Yeah. And so one thing I heard about Mr. Bigelow, and it makes perfect sense because he's a multimillionaire, maybe even a billionaire, but when he gives someone a task or a project, he'd give the person a year to get it done. And if he wasn't satisfied with the results after a year, then, you're done. And Bigelow, and it's interesting that the MUFON participation in the OSAP, what became known later as the OSAP program, lasted about a year. So, there's that 1 year time frame.
That makes sense, Mike.
Yeah, no. I remember a story that Bigelow was even financing Bob Lazar to do research and work. And I believe that Tom is correct. I think it only lasted about a year. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some claims that Lazar was shirking his duties and wasn't really doing the work that Bigelow had intended him to do.
But don't forget, Bigelow also got OSAP going, Mike.
He did. From 2008. And Lou, I think, was there till 2012.
But didn't, as part of that contract with OSAP, Tom, did they get a full copy of the MUFON database that Jacques Vallée could take and use in his database he was putting together for OSAP?
Well, that's one thing I'm not sure about. Now, my understanding was that, and the reason why the MUFON board was willing to get into this in the first place is because MUFON had never had the financial wherewithal to have quick reaction teams that could go anywhere in the United States immediately to investigate hot cases.
You know, really quick, I want to add this in the initial documentation for starting up the RO was supposed to have teams like that, Tom. And I can see why. It's required.
Yeah. So that's the reason why we got into it, was so that we could do that. Now, and I will say this, MUFON had never been around that much money. I mean, I'm not going to quote any specific dollars, but it was a lot of money.
Jay, any thoughts about the initial money that was given by Bigelow to MUFON?
The initial money?
Yeah, no, Jay, he was speaking on the show the other day.
Well, no, I was saying that that money that he gave, Thomas, right though, if you're thinking about it, because if he did have money coming in and it was excess, then MUFON probably did use that for other means, and that's where the maybe not mismanagement, but the funds went to another section that supported the STAR team or supported their actions. Maybe not necessarily what he wanted, but it still supported the overall mission.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I believe the last time you were here, Jay, you mentioned that the money in total that Bigelow had given to MUFON was about $880,000. About 150 of it was missing.
Of 120.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Does that sound about right to you, Tom?
Well, it was a lot of money. I won't say it's wrong.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars basically flowing through the org. That's normally not seeing funding like that happening. So do they set up additional things to go ahead and handle the funding, handle the expenses and everything to make that kind of stuff happen?
Well, that's where the questions come in. But you were asking about did Bigelow's people get, or did Valet get the whole database? And I've never been able to get a straight answer to that. And the way it was supposed to work, as I understood it, was Bigelow wanted quick reaction tasking whenever there were good UFO cases. And Bigelow's people had access to the MUFON database. Now, these were cases that were coming up currently, okay? And they had access to it. They didn't have to give us any money to be able to do that, because if you're a MUFON member, you could go into the CML, you could go and see the most recent cases.
Right, but it doesn't give them direct access to the case management system. It's just basically a web portal to give you some information. Is there any thought, did they have access to the back end of CMS to be able to pull data?
There's been a lot of suspicion about that, but I have not been able to establish it one way or the other. It wouldn't surprise me if they did, because I was just one board member of, a number of board members, and I wasn't told everything that was going on, and that doesn't excuse me from my responsibility.
So what on the board, what position did you hold, Tom?
Treasurer. Yeah.
So you saw the money flowing in and the money going out then?
Well, not the cash. Not the cash involved with the.
But if you're the treasurer, you shouldn't you?
I was aware of the financial statements, the balance sheets, and all that, but the day-to-day cash inflow and outflow with the Bigelow project, I was not on top of that.
Then who would be handling that for MUFON?
Well, Jan Harzan and James Carrion.
What positions did they hold?
Well, James Carrion was the executive director. Jan Harzan was involved in it, and I'm not.
And Jan was what did she hold for a position?
Jan was a board member.
So you have the executive director and a board member looking over the finances and what's going on, but you as the treasurer weren't involved. That just sounds fishy to me.
No, I have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah. But sometimes you go along with the boat of where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the reason why we got into it was because we had never had the financial wherewithal to have a quick reaction team. I mean, a true quick reaction team. And we did get, periodic, I attended board meetings. We got periodic reports on how things were going, and things were on the investigative side, things were going pretty well from April until, say, September or October, somewhere in there. And that's when the trouble started on Bigelow's side. And there was some discussion between, a couple of board members and the executive director and Bigelow's people trying to negotiate what would happen. And I think what ended up happening was they reduced the amount of money they were providing to Mufon.
Right. Well, rightly so, because it sounds like there was 100,000 or so that flowed into Mufon that wasn't spent for the intended cause that caused Bigelow to go ahead and, get his pennies in a bind, as it would be said.
Yeah, I mean, Bigelow is very strict. He's a very smart businessman.
Oh, God. Yeah. And if there's anybody who could ever come forward and say, just screw all this shit and just speak the truth, I'm looking forward to Bigelow just getting in front of Congress sometime and just giving us reading us the riot act on disclosure that we all deserve.
Yeah. But there are a couple of things that I think Jay said that the state directors just run their states any way they want. I'd just like to point out there is state director's handbook. There is a state director's handbook, and they're supposed to run the states according to the state director handbook. Now, whether they do or not, that may be another question.
So if they go against that handbook of what they're supposed to do, and because Jay was just basically not even consulted with not even anything. His position was just yanked out from underneath him on like a memorandum of understanding saying, this is where you're at now, but nothing happened. Jay, and I see you have your hand up. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Tom, it depends, though, because I've been talking to a couple state directors that have been just thrown into the position, and they were contacting me, like Florida state director contacted me and said, I don't know what I'm doing, and I just got thrown into this position, and now I find out we need to owe money every year to the corporation from the state, and I don't know how to do it. I had to tell him how to do it because he didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, I heard you say that, Jay, and I do want to do a little bit of explaining about that because I understand the complaint. But at the time that was instituted, there were some states that had formed their own 501c3s, and they were actually making money. And some of them were kind of doing their own thing, but in Mufon's name. And the executive director at the time and some of the board members felt that if they're going to make money out of the thing, they should be paying something back to headquarters. Now, for certain states where they don't have a lot of activity or they don't have the financial wherewithal, that I can see why they would complain about having to make a payment to headquarters. Now, I don't know what the policy is now because I haven't been with the organization since 2022.
Now, Jay, weren't you saying something the other day about the CMS system was compromised? The Mufon, and they knew who was involved in that?
CMS system was compromised for about 8 months. We were down maybe 7 or 8 months.
So that's the case management system, right?
Yes, the entire case management system was completely compromised. I talked to Dan Medlicott, who was the chief investigator for Pennsylvania, and he was the one that informed me that we couldn't get on and that we were in limbo. And nobody knew what was going on. We were having it investigated. And then I found out from him that Well, I can't say the name, but because I said this before, but we found out, he told me who had gone into the system, and we did not do anything about it. MUFON just kept going forward like nothing happened and didn't try to pursue it in any ways, just said, let's increase the security.
Does that make any sense to you, Tom?
Well, I keep hearing conflicting stories because the first explanation was that it was hacked, but
it was hacked.
And well, but then I've heard that it was hijacked.
But that also goes along with how Jay described it. It was hijacked, meaning the person was someone who had a knowledge of the system. They went and changed out the passwords, everybody, and locked everybody out. That would be a hijacking, right, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, I've heard about all that, but it, you know, it definitely was a bad thing. It was a very bad thing. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't speak well of the organization at all.
No, go ahead, Jay. Your hand is up. And listen, you don't have to raise your hand. You could jump right in.
Just talk, my friend.
Oh, no, that was from before. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, my question to you, Tom, is that the way Jay just explained it, if MUFON knew who was responsible for attacking the CMS system, why do you think they didn't take any action? Doesn't it seem a little odd?
Yes, it does seem odd, and it was down way too long. But that's all I can tell you. I mean, I just don't have any. I don't have any more information than anybody else does in the public domain. But it was not a good thing, and it's, you know, it was not a good look.
Right. But as a former board member, what would be the process during your time at the organization if something like this were to occur? Did they have protocols and policy in place to deal with it?
Well, I personally wrote a contingency plan, you know, for like a disaster recovery plan for the organization. Okay. But I mean, if I was God on the board and I could do anything I want, I mean, obviously you hire a forensic computer examiner to find out what happened. You know, and that costs money, but you know, it's something that has to be done. And then secondly, there probably was inadequate security on the CMS system, but there are so many parties out there that have so much expertise in computer science that I don't know, even if you did have what appears to be adequate security, I don't know if that guarantees that you couldn't get broken into.
Is there a board member who's responsible for the security and the integrity of the data of the CMS?
Or an IT position?
Oh, no, not IT. It would be like a chief technology officer or a chief information officer of MUFON.
The organization's not that big.
They don't have to be that big.
Well,
so they don't have someone in that particular role for the org. Interesting. Nick,
I don't know what they have now, but I don't think they do.
Yeah,
have that.
But then,
but if you remember, Jay also said that the organization, and I'm assuming all the way at the top, they knew who the guilty party was, the individual involved with this. Why do you think they would not take any action, knowing that who this person was?
Well, it depends on who it was.
Oh, there you go. Oh. Good answer.
Tim, who did you potentially mention it was?
You have to give a name,
You
Jay.
said it in the chat before, Tim. Say it in the chat again. He knew who it was. We brought it up before.
Did they have?
Silence.
Can you say what their position in the organization was? Would they be someone who would be aware of this?
No, we're not going to be able to get any. Then at least say it in the chat and I'll bring it up again, Timmy. Come on, Howie Mandel. He'd love you. This was a John, or I think it was a John somebody. It was a John, Mike.
Okay.
I forget the name. I brought it up and Jay confirmed it, actually. But we're walking on eggshells at this point. Delta Echoes.
But I will say this, that when when what later became known as OSAP came up, I was told, and the other board members were told, that the money was coming from an undisclosed source. It wasn't coming from Bigelow. And
so it wasn't coming from Bigelow, it was coming from undisclosed source. Well, that would have been, if that would have been the case at that time, that would have been coming from
the DOD, Defense Intelligence
right?
Agency. Yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't know that at the time. We weren't told that at the time.
That's okay.
Bigelow was the contractor, and we were subcontractors.
You're a subcontractor. I'm bringing you in. I'm not going to tell you who my client is, but I'm going to give you all this money to come and do this stuff for us. This is the stuff you always wanted to do, right? It's the same line that I was sold to come to get brought into freaking Skyfort.
Well, one or more board members knew where it was coming from, but little old board members like me were told that it was not coming from Mr. Bigelow's money. And now at the time, the big donors for projects were people like Lawrence Rockefeller and the Crown Prince of Liechtenstein. So we kind of assumed that it was, people like that. And
like a melon, kind of, almost.
And so in 2017, this article comes out in the New York Times.
Richard Lang.
And, I'm reading this article and then it dawns on me that the money was coming from the DIA, and I hit the ceiling, and because I strongly feel that at least one board member knew that the money was coming from there and didn't disclose that to the board, and the board approved getting into the project when material information had been withheld.
Withheld from you or withheld from everybody?
Well, withheld from the board.
Yeah.
Except that I think that one or two people on the board knew about it.
So it was an inside job. Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
The entire board should have known about it. You should have voted on it. You should have dealt with it. But they kept it to a few members behind the scenes as some kind of deal that you as the treasurer should not know about, which is just, it doesn't add up. Honestly, if some of those people who were on the board then are still on the board now, it kind of feels a bit dirty.
I don't think so. Jan Harzan's not on the board, and I think if James Carrion's not on the board, and I don't think James Carrion was told.
Take a mic, because
I think after a while he got suspicious about it and started suspecting that the money was coming from the government. That's the feeling I had.
Well, if money was coming from the government, I can assure you, Tom, that whoever the involved parties are that were involved with this, with the organization, they weren't doing it out of the kindness of their heart. They probably were getting paid. Nobody does the government favors just for the hell of it.
Well, it was kind of a circular thing because Bigelow was, I think, maybe a financial contributor to Harry Reid in Nevada.
Right.
And maybe Harry Reid felt like he owed Bigelow a favor. And then you had Mr. Lukatsky, who had visited the Skinwalker Ranch, and he was impressed by an anomalous experience that he had. And I think Mr. Lukatsky went back, who was with the DIA, he went back to the DIA. And somehow this flowed back into Harry Reid and his contacts in the Senate, and they arranged to finance this whole thing, the $22 million business. And then they set up a solicitation for contractors, and Bigelow's organization was, Bass was the only one that applied, and of course they were accepted. And then Bass subcontracted the field investigation to Mufon.
Yeah, that makes sense. But anytime the government is involved, the organization should be fully aware of their involvement and their participation. And if for some reason that information is not shared with the rest of the board, it doesn't seem right to me. What do you think about that, either Jay or Tom?
No, that's withholding material information. Okay, and that's a no-no in my book. I don't know about other people, but
exactly. Yeah, it has to be. But then it goes back full circle. These individuals that were facilitating this, they weren't doing it for charity reasons. They were working with the government with knowledge and forethought. They must have gotten paid. It wasn't a gift, not in my opinion.
You mean the people that knew about it, or?
Yeah, the people who knew about it and did not want to share it with the rest of the board. They were purposely keeping that information from the rest of the organization, knowing full well where it's truly coming from. But they didn't do that for kicks. They did it. They had to have been incentivized in some way. That's how I see it.
Well,
it wasn't charity.
Well, you may be right, but I don't have any direct evidence, that they were paid anything under the table or anything like that.
No, it sounds like money was coming in. There were deals that were made. There were receipts that were flowing through the system. But as a treasurer, you weren't included in it because it was some side deals that were going on with members of the board that were behind the scenes that should have been in the open.
Well, one of the dynamics in all this was it dealt with UFO, okay, at least partly with UFOs.
Yeah.
And government people are extremely skittish about getting, and you got to realize we're going back to 2008. This is long before, we've had actually 6 congressional hearings, since I think 2022.
So you're talking 2008, the year of the financial crisis that hit.
Yeah, but back in those days, nobody in the government wanted to be publicly associated with a UFO project. No. So the whole thing was done under the table. Harry Reid and Mr. Bigelow knew each other, and Mr. Bigelow was, I hope I'm not incorrect, but he had probably contributed financial to Harry Reid.
But he was also involved with Colonel John Alexander and John Glenn and others who were looking forward and moving towards disclosure as part of that Las Vegas consortium of disclosure advocates.
Well, back then it was NIDS. NIDS was in the 90s. And a lot of the luminaries that we know of today were involved in NIDS, but it wasn't a disclosure movement per se. And I have pointed this out before, but if you go back into the 80s with Bill Moore and the UFO Cover-Up Live program and the disclosure of the MJ-12 documents and all that, there was a push behind the scenes to try to get congressional hearings. Of course, that didn't happen back then. And I don't think that NIDS was a disclosure group per se. They were more of a scientific investigative body.
Yeah.
But at the same time, even the DIA and Harry Reid and the government people, they didn't want to be associated with UFOs. So they were trying to keep it hush-hush. They were trying to limit the number of people that knew about where the money was really coming from. That's what I think the motivation was.
Interesting, Mike.
Yeah, no, that actually makes a lot of sense if we're talking about the time frame. Yeah, I agree. They didn't want the public to know what they were up to, the government.
Yes,
which is typical
right.
for how they operate.
Well, and in some ways it doesn't make sense to me because I don't really, this is my opinion, but I don't think the Defense Intelligence Agency was even interested in the information. I think that James Lukatsky, if I got his first name right, Mr. Lukatsky, I think he was interested in following up with some things. And there were some other things included in the work, like all of these scientific papers that were presented, and submitted into the system. So, and that was certainly useful. But I don't know how they could tell anything to the DIA through that the DIA wouldn't be able to find out on their own. In a lot of ways, this whole thing just didn't make any sense to me.
Seems like a lot of pieces are missing from the puzzle, Tom.
Well, it sounds like, Mike, it was a great idea. Take the people, the investigators who have signed up for MUFON, gone through all the training, have earned their credentials, invested a lot of money into different gear and stuff, and get them to go ahead and investigate different cases that are popping up. And if you have the way the MUFON usually operates, now you've got this additional funding to, at a last moment, jump someone on a plane, a couple people from around the United States, get them to fly to a hot spot as things are going on potentially, and research what's happening, right? So it's different from the way MUFON operated, but this is a way for them to extend the operation and to take it from where they were at to actually work with someone who's getting funded. They didn't know at that time by the DOD to go research this, but now they've got real money, real efforts to go ahead and actually operationalize this and turn it into something big. But when the money hit and all this stuff happened, it's like, oh, we don't need all this. Let's whatever happened to that, because that was money that Bigelow wanted back, because it was being spent on things besides the effort that he wanted. And it's no different than a contract like I had with Disney back in the day, saying the money that's coming in for this particular project is going to be going towards this project and towards these staff members. And these are the things that we expect all these people to be conducting over this period of time to equate for the money. And if Bigelow was so headstrong on making sure the money is going where it needs to go, I would, without a shadow of a doubt, absolutely say 100% he had this kind of stuff in his agreements, which then made him go ahead literally and audit the stuff and say, what the fuck's going on? I gave you all this money. You're spending it on this, and there's a huge hole here. What is that hole? I want to know. And if that's the case, if I was putting the contract out and I was paying a subcontractor to do all this stuff and all this money can't be accounted for, oh my God, man, Mike, that is a huge red flag that anybody would go ahead and see and say, what are you doing here, friend? You're supposed to be a partner with me on this. And it's just, I can see the shit on the wall and it's not mine, right?
It starts to look like embezzlement or fraud.
Well, I was going to say that if you look at some of the people that were on the board at that time, with Tom and everything, not saying you or anything, but other people that were on the board, the people that left, you just look at what has happened since then, and I don't believe that. I'm not positive, because I wasn't back then, but Jan, was involved in something in 2020 and, was removed as executive director of MUFON. So it seems to me that we shouldn't point fingers unless we figure out where it actually went.
Well, we're not pointing fingers. We're just saying it doesn't smell right.
Yeah. No, I agree.
There, depending on how you view what happened, depends on who you talk to. There are two sides to every story.
That's true.
And there's the MUFON there's the side of the person that was running MUFON at the time. There's his side of the story. And then there are certain board members, their side of the story. And it was a long time ago. I mean, it was 15, 16 years ago. Right. I wish I couldn't help you more.
But it was there. It was a period of time. But still, Tom, you're the treasurer. You didn't have full purview of everything that was going on, things that were flowing in, what they were flowing in for, what they were flowing out for. So in some ways, you were put on blinders.
Well, some things were run that way. I wasn't told everything that I should have been told.
No.
And that's not the only instance of it.
And that would be the chairman of the board who would be responsible for that kind of behavior going on along the board.
But the thing is, when you have a board, sometimes you have a board within a board. You know what I mean?
But you shouldn't.
Well, but that's...
If you have a chairman and the different people that go along with it. I was on the board of trustees at the largest community college. It was actually the largest college in the state of Illinois back at the time. We had a chairman of the board. We had a president. We had other people over finance and stuff. And I hung out with Rob Keener, who was part of finance. And I played a $500 million play on them, and they paid out in the long run. But it just comes down to, if you have a board, there should be the one board that's there, and there shouldn't be factions, realistically speaking, unless there's something that's going on that just doesn't taste right.
Well, you're talking about, you have group dynamics. Okay. And anytime you have a group, you usually end up with factions. I mean, the bigger the group, the more opportunity there is for factions. And some people like to run things so that only certain people know certain things, and they don't want too much information getting out. Now, I didn't know as much as I should have known. I should have been more diligent and aggressive, and I take responsibility for it. But at the same time, this whole thing was basically, it was not above board. Okay. There are people in government that didn't want the public to know that the government was involved, and there are other people that knew where the money was coming from that weren't disclosing, what the true situation.
Wow. I hear you,
Dean,
Tom.
you have your hand up. You have a question?
Yeah, actually, so I was in the back channel here. I'm taking a look through. I've been going through the 2007 and 2010 990s for MUFON as a nonprofit. And so in fiscal year 2009, you see a significant change of their revenues up to about going from about 144, well, somewhere in the 100,000s. I don't have it right in front of me. I'd have to switch screens, up to a $500,000. And then the following year, you see the salaries double.
Really?
I haven't gone.
So they had the money flowing in from Bigelow, and they doubled the salaries.
Well, some people were paid salaries. You had a guy that was running the field investigator network. You had people that were acting as operators that were assigning people to locations, and during that year, that 2009 to 2010, there were people that were getting paid salaries that had never been paid salaries before because of the project. And it only lasted for that 12-month period.
Yeah. Well, we should be able to check and see because I think they have to break it down by member.
Nick, do you have a comment that goes along with the current conversation, or is it something else you want to bring up?
It's something else I want to bring up.
Let's hold this off till the end of the conversation. I know you want to bring it up and everything. Let's continue with the MUFON thing, and then we'll get to you. Does that sound fair? All right, perfect. Let's get back to it. Go ahead, Gene.
Sorry about that. No, let me give me a couple minutes. I'll keep going through, and then I'll come back once I have a little better analysis. But I can, at least see where it looks like it came in, and I'll see what the breakdown is of where they say it went out.
So in the meantime, Jay, I'm curious to see what your thoughts are about everything that Tom has been explaining to us about MUFON. What do you think?
My personal opinion is that, like Tom said, that I'm going to go off of what Tom said, that there is, probably different factions. The bigger a board is, you're going to get little micro factions, I guess, in there, two people agreeing with each other or something. But And like I said when I was on here before, that I don't believe MUFON's a bad organization. I don't. I just, back then had a few bad apples, and we still do. Every organization does. We're just weeding them out, I guess. And it's taken longer than what I would think it would.
It seems there's no fiduciary or different responsibilities to members of the board that allow to go them and pull the organization in these different areas without any responsibility. And it just seems like it's a, oh God,
shit show.
Fascist organization. Let's just say it.
Well, I didn't like when Mike had, or Gene had said about, not Mike, sorry, that when Gene had said about the salaries had doubled. So I don't know about that. I didn't look all into that, but that seems kind of strange in itself by itself anyway. If it's 1 year and you're making this amount and it's double the next year, are you doing more
what really
work,
shocks me is you have someone who's the treasurer who's not aware of the deals that are going on with MUFON and outside of MUFON and what's happening, and he's kept completely isolated from it. And you've got this other part of MUFON who's acting in their own entity, although the basic organizational structure of what should be going on for this nonprofit organization is failing over purposefully.
I go with Mike. It's a shit show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think the biggest problem with MUFON is that the board is not elected. It's self-appointed. It's a closed loop.
So the people who are in the board can elect other people in the board to come in. It doesn't come from a greater organization. So what you're saying is that old boys club of what's going on is actually polluting it because they keep on bringing in people who only they want to have in.
Right.
Well, also, I was going to say that I was told also this year that, if you want to be on the board, then why don't you just you can give voluntarily to MUFON a certain amount, and you can actually pretty much pay your way to get on the board. It's $5,000, and if I gave $5,000 for a volunteer, then they would I would have a position on that.
I've never heard that. I was.
Oh, that's what they told me this year.
I've never paid money to be on the board. I mean, I'm a benefactor, and I've spent many thousands of dollars of my own money.
That might have been what it was, being a benefactor for the board.
Well, but
I'm not sure
there are
exactly
lots of
the wording.
There's a whole list of benefactors, and not everyone that's a benefactor is on the board.
Hey, Tom, I have to ask you a question. We haven't heard this one yet. Not sure if it's where we want to go or not, but what pulled you off the board?
I'd rather not get into that, but it was, I did not do anything wrong.
No. And that's from what I understood back in the day.
There was a situation where their trust was broken in the situation, and I decided it was time to get out of there, because
time to get the hell out of Dodge.
If you can't trust the people you're working with or the person you're working with, and that kind of a thing. But I don't want to go into it any more than that.
Sorry if I went to that point.
I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And no one would suspect you of doing anything wrong, Tom.
Oh, hell no.
Just so you know.
No.
Right.
It sounds like Tom tried to do his duties, but within certain respect, the other factions within the board, the little groups, kept the information then flowing for him, and that what was required for him to actually do the job that he was actually elected to handle.
Tom wasn't given all the information to fully complete his job that he was assigned to in the organization. That's what I believe.
And it sounds like data that was supposed to be flowing to you, Tom, wasn't, because they had you in this position, but they didn't want to give you
and it wasn't just me. I mean, they weren't telling anybody where the money was coming from. We didn't just like me, anyone who read that New York Times article and put two and two together, would realize that finally what was really truly going on. And then the George Knapp Lakatsky book came out years after that, which explained more of it. It's kind of like...
My question to you, Tom, is Jay was talking to us about he worked at the organization for 8 years. He spent over $15,000 of his own money to the organization. And then, out of the blue, they send him notification that they are demoting and busting him down to field investigator, which is where he started, without an explanation. When you were on the board, would that be typical policy? If you're going to demote somebody or remove them, would you provide an explanation, or you wouldn't provide any at all?
I was going to ask that real quick on top of that. I was going to say, Mike, you asked me to look into the bylaws. Maybe Tom would have something to know about that. Do they have to provide a reason for downgrade in position if you're in a volunteer organization, or is it just a company?
Yeah, no, you're right, Jay.
Well, if I was doing it personally, I would give an explanation. Okay,
but do they have to?
I can't speak to what their policies are now. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to avoid the question.
Oh, no. I understand.
I mean, it's just courtesy. Were you in some kind of a conflict with somebody over there?
Oh, that's a long story. Long story short, I started complaining that Mufon did not want to live up to a mistake that they had made in the past with Chris Bledsoe and his Mufon case. And
so really quickly, how did they rule on Chris Bledsoe's sightings? Was it positive or negative?
Negative.
Oh, back then it was negative.
Yeah, of course.
And I just I made a big stink about it, about sitting there and making amends for something that we did back in the past, and they kept telling me, don't bring it up, don't make a stink about it, leave it alone. And I kept bringing it up, and they sent me this letter in the mail from the state director of Pennsylvania, just a change of status notice from section state director to just field investigator. There was no notice, no why or anything. It was just I'm putting two and two together because I was the one complaining, and now I get this notice in the mail. So I'm the one that's putting this together,
Well, I don't think that's right that you weren't given an explanation, but it also sounds like you were in conflict with somebody over there.
Yes.
Okay.
So you think this is worth Jay going ahead and bringing this up with the board, or just take and just deal with what the local state has resolved with, Tom?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you think this is something Jay should go ahead and go beyond over his state and go with the overall board, or should he just let it go?
Well, I mean, he can try. He can write a letter to the board or email the board members and see if he can get some traction there. There's no guarantee that they'll do anything about it.
I'll take your advice, Tom. I'm going to write to them, at least try to make some traction that way, and then I will update Thomas as I go along.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it's right for you to be demoted without an explanation. Okay, I agree with you on that. And you can certainly try to communicate with the board as best you can. But I can't make any guarantees what the outcome would be.
Absolutely. Great advice, Tom. I appreciate that. Mike, anything else from your side?
Yeah, I think we really covered a lot of the ins and outs about MUFON and how they conduct business. Been an interesting conversation so far between Jay, Tom, and you and myself.
Oh gosh, yes. It's great great to understand what was going on in MUFON back in the day, what was going on, what Tom's involvement was as treasurer back then, and it's just an eye-opening situation to help us piece things together in this thing we all call disclosure. We all want the truth to come forward. We know that Bob Bigelow has had his hands closer to any of this stuff than, I'd say, 99.9% of the population. Would you agree, Mike?
I would. It's obvious that Bigelow is more knowledgeable over a larger period of time than I think a lot of people in the government who look into this. I think that he probably should have come forward to the public and shared what he has discovered over decades. And I'm surprised at this point that he hasn't done that yet. That's my thought on it.
I guess it takes some time, doesn't it?
Well, Bob isn't exactly a spring chicken anymore.
No, but if there's attorney of the EBEs, we've had this conversation many times, my friend. If there's anybody who would come forward on this and doesn't give a fuck about anything and could go ahead and just spill the beans about what we need to hear about disclosure, 100% it's Bob Bigelow, Mike.
I agree. And I'm just a little disappointed with how the government has put the brakes on with disclosure over the past 3 years since David Grush publicly testified. That would have been a prime opportunity for Bigelow to step forward.
Yeah.
And he hasn't. So I'm, I guess, a little disappointed.
Yeah. It is a bit disappointing.
Thomas,
Go ahead, Jay.
Was it you or Mike that sent me the text tonight about the show?
Mike.
Hey, Mike, I sent you a text. I clipped a video of the Prime Minister of Norway. She came out and is talking about the newest drone activity.
Yeah, she does. And she says it's just things making aerial observations. Don't forget, they've got a global conference going on right now in Copenhagen. So she has to, if you want to call it, tamper down what's going on. But if you look at what Germany has said, based on the drones they saw over Munich airport, based on what's been seen in drones that have crashed over in Poland, the drones we've been seeing over in parts of the EU, the eastern parts or northeastern parts of EU that line up close to Russia, it's Germany's saying the drones are all from Russia. And I have to agree with them.
I have to agree as well as far as what that's with Russia, because it's looking more and more that way.
Yeah. And you have Denmark saying, "Oh my God, it's not Russia, it's not Russia." But can we really believe? Can we believe Russia, Mike? Like, oh my God.
No. Just like they told us when they were doing war games.
Oh yeah, that's right. We're just having an exercise near the border of Ukraine and up in Belarus. And that's all we're doing is we're just practicing my fucking ass as they all freaking go into the country and try and take it over. Not even close. Not believable. 100%. But anyone who goes there is going to be kind of like, why are you believing Putin? But some people do. Mike, I need to bring up some interesting facts. Let's bring it up here. Where's this at? Here we go. All right, interesting fact, Mike.
Yes.
If a clown like RPK or Tupa Cabra say, if a clown continues to report false information as though a correction never happened, that clown becomes responsible for intentionally misleading both ethically and legally. What are we talking about here, Mike? Oh, yes, it's been going on. Yes, they've been going after the statements that have been made by Swan. The statements have been made by Tupacabra, but with actually not Chupacabra, LM, with respect to their involvement with Lou and orders coming from Lou, all this crazy, literally, like you need frickin' mental help, my friend, because you are lying more as much as my ex-wife did, and she is a pathological liar. And to say something, it's a fact, this is what's happened, but then to go ahead and take it back, it's just a mess.
And state and confirm that it was a lie.
Right.
Publicly.
But now, still, irrespective of those walkbacks, Red Panda Koala, is still going out there and promoting these things like it's actually real, which is just, I'm glad that he's doing this because it's in the longest time frame, it's going to go ahead and back up against them because they're standing behind statements that are completely fabricated. Yeah, and they know it because the people who made those statements, like Swan, oh my God, the stuff that happened with and LM, of course, but the stuff that happened earlier today with was it Anna Paulina Luna?
Yeah, Representative Anna Paulina Luna.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
She went on
Remember,
an interview.
LM had gone and spread the rumor that Swan, when he worked
for the VA
or works at the VA, he says he doesn't work there anymore, but we'll find out. That this is just so fucking crazy, Mike. That when they were at the VA, that he purposely went and docs David Grush to find out his medical records coming on the direction from you, but ultimately coming from Lou Elizondo. Right?
Right. That's correct.
So now,
because
go ahead, Mike.
Lou's a good friend of ours. He's been on the show. And they took that as an opportunity to try to create drama. But it wasn't based on anything factual. It was all fabrication, lies, misinformation, and they have been going out of their way to spread it far and wide. They do it for attention, clicks, to get recognition, but it's all on false statements.
So the whole thing, unfortunately, Anna Paulina Luna is listening to these folks because they're saying that someone leaked his medical records out of the VA to try and discredit him. And that is a narrative that was brought forward solely by Red Panda Koala. And well, we know it's Ken Klippenstein is the one who did that, but this whole story about leaking records out of the VA to try and discredit him came from Tupa and Red Panda Koala. Correct. And they're pointing all of this back towards you, Mike, instructing Swan and pressuring Swan to go ahead and do this investigation to dox David Grush, which makes no sense because David and Lou were friends who both worked at the Space Force at the same time. Lou would drive down 2-3 days a week from Wyoming. Right. David Grush lived there with his wife, Crystal Springs, for Space Force. And it's just, it's never made sense. But it's gotten up to the point where Anna Paulina Luna, bless her blonde roots, is going in and saying that he was doxxed from the VA, and Swan, this means you, my friend. They're not coming after me. I never worked at the VA. She is squarely coming after you, Swan. And I support you, and I know what she's saying is not true, but my God, my friend, you are fucked. Let's play this.
That's not the first time that we had a
Hold
vet.
Raise the volume.
I'm going to bring it up right now. Here we go.
That's not the first time that we had a vet have their records leaked or attacked after coming forward. So Grush had his.
So like just shadow
VA.
people are releasing this. Like we don't know who.
Well, yeah, it's like an inside job, botch job on their reputation to try to discredit them. So shortly after Grush had testified, someone leaked his medical records out of the VA.
Right.
To try to discredit him.
Swan, she's talking about you. We love you, my friend. This is not right because we know you did not do that. 100%. Play it again.
Testified someone leaked his medical records out of the VA.
VA.
Right.
To try to discredit him.
And got to remember, LM went and shared it that it was Swan who leaked the records out of the VA based on Mike, you pressuring him.
Right. And they made the accusation that you and I, being good friends of Lou, have been working on his behalf to spread disinformation and dox David Grush.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the public record is that David Grush was exposed by Ken Klippenstein.
Yes.
And he was directed by members of intelligence to FOIA the sheriff's office that David Grush then went and sued.
Based on the records and information that was given at the time of his arrest, where he said he had PTSD and everything, all the information for that arrest was all from that one sheriff in Pennsylvania, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So to go ahead and blame that, Annapolina Luna, on a poor individual who hung out with Lee for a period of time, someone who definitely needs help, Mike. As much as my ex-wife needs help. Pathological liar. I know it for a fact, he always said. It's a fact. When you ever hear someone say that, never believe a word they say, just saying.
It seems like they look to take advantage of people that have all sorts of different issues and take advantage of that for their own agenda, meaning Chupacabra and Red Panda Koala. And they have been doing this for some time now. It's nothing new. It's not like something they just started the other day. This has been ongoing. And it's just, it's amazing to me because Josh, Red Panda Koala, is 39 years old.
What's
and
Josh's last name, by the way?
Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, from The Matrix.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves. Yeah,
and then he got Tupa, who's Sam.
Yeah, he, hold on a second. Yeah, he's 40 years old, but
they're both like 40 years old, living at home with like old relatives.
Yeah, the thing is that they're 39 and 40 years old, respectively, but they act
like great couple.
Bad teenagers. That's who would do something like this. Is young children living in their parents'
But they're not
basement
young.
on the internet. They're
I guess 40 is young.
No, they're middle-aged. They're not young at all.
Yeah.
So it's for them to be acting in the manner that they have continued to do for so long.
But they get Burleson and everybody else to show up on their spaces. How does that happen?
Yeah, and they're looking for notoriety on the internet, of all places, which really
Like the
doesn't make a
Wikipedia?
lot of sense in the real world.
I wonder if the Wikipedia actually treats them nicely. You never know. We got to check.
Well, yeah, something like that. But these individuals have been acting with malice and forethought towards us, the show, Lou, his family. Everybody is a target to them.
Yeah.
And they're unaware.
Including his poor
at least
wife,
for now.
Jennifer. My God.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That there are very strong legal ramifications for actions like this, especially after the fact, when they know and have acknowledged that the statements that they have repeated from these individuals who came forward and admitted them to be false, that they were lying, that what they said was not true, they didn't mean it. The retractions have gone out publicly. And for them to ignore those retractions and continue to push this narrative out there like it's all real, which it isn't, that's really looking to cause a lot of trouble. And usually as a result of that, there are consequences, which we are on the forefront of. They're going to have an interesting Christmas this year. And we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think so, my friend. Let's.
Oh, I know so.
Let me finish off this clip here, so then we'll go right to everybody else. Hold on.
Right.
To try to discredit him.
That's crazy. I mean,
yeah.
This is like the Streisand effect, right? Like when you're attacking these people who are coming out and saying this stuff and trying to like
the Streisand effect is when you go to a gay bar and you close your eyes and listen to the people in the outside, like Cabana, and all you can hear is 100 people talking like freaking Barbara's Mrs. Streisand, don't you know?
Deliberately ruin their reputation.
They try to ruin Borland's life. He's later on. You need to watch the whole hearing. It was pretty wild. So anyways, all that to say that we just go on facts. The facts speak for themselves. I don't tell people what to believe, but I can tell you that I've seen some pretty wild stuff in this task force.
Mike, we need to get her to the right facts. Syrup, go ahead.
Yeah, this isn't a good sign, right? Like I know you guys can be a little bit rough on Luna, right? Not rough, but you got your opinions. I kind of was liking what Luna was doing, but now this is not a good sign. That I feel like she's getting her information from Twitter. Like you're supposed to be the big boss lady, Luna. You're supposed to have all the information. You shouldn't be getting on Twitter for your information.
No,
it's not a good sign.
It's not a good source.
Yeah,
Considering her position,
it's not a good source.
From government in Congress, as a sitting active member of Congress, chair of the Secrets Task Force, any information that she talks about publicly should have already been vetted and verified. It should not be coming from trolls on the internet, on Twitter, on X.
It's very amateurish, kind of like it's not. I don't know, man. It's not a good look. I don't think it's a good look at all because we're sitting there looking at it like, what? And,
right. It's not supposed to be about rumor, speculation, innuendo. It's supposed to be facts that she's talking about.
And here they're talking about whistleblower Swan, who worked for the VA, saying that he's a whistleblower and he was actually instructed by you, Mike, to go ahead and dox David Grush's medical records. But it just doesn't make sense because David and Lou are friends. And Lou asked us to watch out for David and protect him. Why? The lies that these guys spin, it's just libelous.
Right. Including the fact that when Danny Sheehan had actually leaked David Grush's name on that interview, you reached out to him and to let him know that his name was now out there publicly.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
They all pointed back to someone else, but no, it was actually on the podcast from Jimmy Church. And Jimmy Church had Danny Sheehan on, and that's where Danny Sheehan went and leaked David Grush's name and Carl Nell.
Right.
Fuck you, Carl Nell. You'll never make Colonel.
General.
General, that's right. Yeah. No wonder why you never made General, as Ivan Hanna would say.
Right. So if we were truly out trying to expose the people that we know, we wouldn't need anybody else to do that.
Yeah.
And it would have happened a long time ago, but that's obviously not the case.
But based on Anna Polina Looney here, Mike, she is falling to good old-fashioned disinformation and reporting on it and talking about it.
Correct. Like it's a fact. And the people that are in the public that are not knowledgeable about any of this activity, and they hear her, they think that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened, because the facts that are public is that Ken Klippenstein was directed by members of the intelligence community to submit a FOIA to the Sheriff's Department about David Grush, and any information that came out publicly had to do with his PTSD episode. And that all became public. Had nothing to do with the VA, had nothing to do with any individual bringing his medical records out. That certainly was not the case.
No.
But they like to twist the narrative to fit their agenda.
Yeah.
And when you do things, you commit actions like this publicly, there are always legal consequences to that.
What is the old saying? When you fuck around, Mike, you find out.
You find out. That's exactly right.
Well, along those lines, last comment of the night. Nick, you have had your hand up since the start of the show. What say you?
Did you see what Europeans said recently about the drones? They said like we should stop calling them drones.
There was that because that's coming from the Danish when they have that World Economic Forum, if you want to call it, meeting going on right now this week. And they were saying we're going to go and take it from a drone into some kind of an aerial observer. However, as of last night, Nick, we had the Germans go ahead and call out and say all the drones that went from all these different countries and wound up in Germany by Munich airport, they're Russian drones. They've tracked them where they came from and where they've landed. And some of these things, they don't just go on and fly off everywhere. They actually do land at the end. More importantly, there's also been a drone that crashed in Poland recently. That's also a drone that's been identified coming from Russia. While they've tried to keep the pictures off the internet, there are some pictures out there of the crash site, so it's kind of happening. So Nick, I understand where you're coming from. You want this to be a non-human intelligence, but it really looks like it's just the dirty tricks of Putin once again trying to stir things up before an inevitable World War III starting in Europe. Did that work, Mike?
Yeah, I think you answered the question pretty well, Thomas.
Wow. Okay. I'll take that as a good sign.
Yeah, it should be a good sign.
I've been watching this stuff every single day, and if you watch some of the stuff that was going out there, let's see if I can go ahead and... Oh, where's Brave? Let's get to here. There was things, Mike, I guess we could have had that show on Saturday when you were having such a great time going on. But, I guess this is how it kind of goes sometimes, Mike. Oh, that's not the one. Let's get back to desktop. Here we go. Get rid of that on the show. Hold on. I'm sorry, audience. We all know. Too much. We all know what the answer truly is and what's going on with Russia. Sometimes we don't want to go ahead and understand it. If you want to take a look at this, came in 12 hours ago. German Chancellor Merz said the drones spotted over Germany belong to Russia. According to Merz, Europe's airspace is being violated more frequently than during the Cold War. We assume that Russia is behind the most of these drones flights so far. That have been no incidents involving armed drones, only espionage attempts and efforts to cause public anxiety, the German leaders said. Early in October, Munich airport suspended operations twice after unidentified drones were detected nearby. Similar incidents were reported in the state of Schleswig-Holstein. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry denied the accusation, saying Russia does not launch drones over Europe. He called the appearance of UAVs over Germany, Denmark, Norway, Poland, and other countries, quote, indeed rather strange, but insisted there was no reason to blame Russia. This is what we're dealing with, Mike.
Well, you and I have been saying this publicly since those drones first appeared in Europe. We said that they are not UAP, they are not exhibiting the 5 observables, and that they have to be originating from Russia with what's going on. And now we got that confirmed. So we've been right all along.
Yeah. It just continues. It's out there. It's showing, and it's in a war zone. And this isn't the non-human intelligence trying to come and tell us, oh my God, you need to stop. World War III is about to happen. No, this is the Russians saying, we're about to go ahead and cause World War III, my friend.
They're coming pretty damn close, it looks like. It's escalating.
Good. Absolutely. Do me a favor, Mike, handle us for 30 seconds, and we'll close it out.
Absolutely. So I want to thank Jay and Tom Whitmore for coming on the show to discuss what's been going on with MUFON. Very interesting conversation, gentlemen. And we'll see where everything goes with that organization down the road. Hopefully, better times ahead for them with disclosure. And Gene, as always, good friend of Thomas and mine on the show. Thank you again for coming in and joining us and helping out. Great information. Thanks for looking into the doubling of the salary of MUFON. That was a very interesting tidbit about what goes on. So we appreciate that information and everything that,
No, absolutely. I sent you a text with some follow-up, but kind of shows the breakdown and spend. And, it's nothing. There's a few flags. And, I think what's consistent is there's some governance issues there for sure. And transparency that the organization might want to address.
Yeah, well, listen, Tom was explaining to us that as a treasurer and a member of the board, there were certain things that they were keeping him away from. So it just goes to show you that's an example of the type of governance that has been going on with MUFON, which, can at one point lead into the issues like this that Jay has been sharing with us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good conversation all the way around.
Yep.
We spoke about a lot of different things, and it was another fun Monday night show.
Oh, you better believe it, my friend. And I want to thank everybody for coming out to this episode of Disclosure tonight. Holy cow. Where did 2 hours go, or at least close to 2 hours at that point, or hour and 45 minutes. I want to thank everybody for your wonderful super chats tonight. Starting off first with Vern Dude saying, hello, DT fam. Brendan England throwing us $10 Australian. Thank you very much, my friend. And Anonymous Rex, can we please talk about these UFO photos? Is that beaming coming from out of the bottom of that thing? No. Actually, Anonymous Rex, sorry I didn't see this super chat until now. It's actually a stand this thing is balancing on top of. So we'll get to that in the next episode on Friday night, my friends. And Mike, as we usually say at the end of every episode of Disclosure tonight, eyes open, no fear, be safe, everybody, but
go back to Party City where you belong.
Absolutely. We'll catch you in the flip side. Good night, everybody. Y'all come back now. Here. Bye-bye. Take care.